A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. This week, that would be Sons of Aries Volume 1, written by Rick Hoskin and story by Pierce Brown. That's the entire full graphic novel, Volume 1, not just the first chapter, the whole dang thing. Hey there, this is Cross.
And I'm PJ.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. You should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
I would have a quip here, but I feel like it's important to point out we will probably also be spoiling the entire Red Rising saga. So, although this is a prequel to the series, there are a lot of story notes that tie in to the rest of the series, so we will be spoiling that as well. So
you also shouldn't read this before you read the series, because you're spoiled on one of the biggest notes from the second book that happens.
That's so very true. You shouldn't, but I feel like there are people that probably do.
That's an important enough side note. I think in this one we'll talk, I mean, we probably will talk about the entire series in some context, but probably not too much that's overly plot specific, because this is pretty self-contained, but, you know, we also license the right to do whatever the fuck we want.
We're both a little silly today, so things are going to get a little strange, I'm sure.
I just noticed in the notes that it's still your stuff from the first, because I copied the first note from the first DA episode into this, so it's your fucking DA notes. I was like, are you gonna say that? And I was like, oh no, that's not it, you just didn't change it. All right, sweet. With that, today is our first episode of 2 covering the Sons of Aries. Today, as I said earlier, we're gonna be tackling Volume 1. Sons of Aries, as I mentioned, is a story by Pierce Brown, scripted by Rick Hoskin, and art by Eli Powell. I think that's kind of important to note up front, as will become obvious as we continue through the conversation. You know, I guess maybe that was a little bit that might have been too aggressive, but yeah, it's not fully Pierce's story, which is also interesting to see someone else's take, even with like his bones. So I think that this is, you know, kind of fun to talk about that way too.
Don't take his bones.
But before we do that, don't take his bones. No bones day for Pierce Brown, real quick. Oh man. All right. So PJ, what are you drinking?
So I have a little cocktail called an improved whiskey cocktail. It is 2 1/4 ounces of rye, half an ounce of maraschino liqueur, a dash of absinthe, and 3 dashes of Pashad bitters. It calls for a lemon garnish. I didn't have any lemon, so I didn't do that. And I think it could have used it. I think instead I garnished, as I tend to, because I have them with a cocktail cherry. But I think it could have used a little bit of brightness, a little bit of acidity, a little bit of just lemon, for lack of a better term, because that's what it would have been. Ultimately, it's a little bit spicy, pretty bitter. I'm here for it. I think that's exactly what I was looking for. But just to balance things out, I think lemon would have done really well here. Either way, it tastes good. I had never had maraschino liqueur before, so I picked some of that up. I feel like this is going to be a similar thing to Fernet Branca, in that everything that it exists in calls for like a little tiny bit of it. So, and they only had a liter bottle, so I've got a lot of that. Also, I've been looking for a Dasher bottle. I think I'm going to have to order it online, because I can't find them anywhere. And I'm really getting upset with like over pouring my absinthe into shit. Today I just put my thumb over like the cap of the bottle and like dripped it in a little bit. But man, like absinthe, it's tasty, but it is so goddamn strong.
It is absolutely overpowering in some cocktails. So yeah, I do not. I agree with you. I think a dasher bottle is a great idea. I just have a very tiny. I think I've talked about this before, but like those weird like 4 ounce, 6 ounce like vertical wine advent calendar things that kind of look like enlarged test tubes, and so those have a small enough top where I can basically do the thumb method, and it's fairly effective. Yeah. But I would definitely prefer a dasher bottle. I was just improving as one is wont to do. And then what are you following up with?
I've got, I think, my favorite can of Black Stack I've ever had. I haven't tasted it yet, but it's another New England IPA because that's what they do. That's like the thing they do so well. But title, Can I Speak to Your Manager? And style, I don't intend to pay for this New England IPA.
Nice.
So it's the back label where it gives all the description and everything. It's Strata, Mosaic, Equinaut, and HBC 568 hops. But it's a nice sort of shout out to industry service workers and all the shit they have to put up with. So I'm sure it'll taste good, but I haven't opened it yet. So what about you, Crossland? Yeah. What are you drinking?
I'm very jealous of the beer. Can I speak to your manager, please? I am having an El Guapo, but I'm also calling it the Rage of Aries because I swapped out one of the ingredients that we'll talk about in a second here. So what it is it is 2 ounces of tequila, 6 pieces of lime chunk, basically just kind of quartered, not like a full quartered lime, but like you cut it into the wedge, you cut that in half, and I did that 6 times. So, to get 6 pieces, so 3 of those. 3/4 ounces of simple syrup, and then in theory you would put in Cholula hot sauce. However, I don't like Cholula more than I like other hot sauces personally. Still like it, but it's not one that I keep around my house. However, I'm out of a lot of my other hot sauces, so I had to go down to the barrel of using Tabasco, which I knew wasn't going to be hot enough and it was going to be a little bit too vinegary, and I want something with a little bit more, tomato, like you might get out of Cholula. However, my other option was just to go very hot there, and so I put in the Tabasco scorpion pepper hot sauce, which is why I'm calling it the Rage of Aries, because it is hot. And then you just top it with pepper and a little bit of cayenne. So
there you go.
Yeah.
That sounds delicious.
Nice to look too. It's super fucking good. I'm really happy that I went with this one to try it. And then following that up with a relative mainstay on the show. I haven't had it in a while. It was a long time ago, but Kitten Biscuit from Wilmington Brewing Company, which again, the younger child of Lion Cake. I know that I've said this many times on the show. So if you've heard before, you know exactly what it is. But they started brewing it again. They took it off rotation for like 3 months and then brought it back out again. So,
well, welcome back.
Yep,
Kitten
welcome
Biscuits.
back. Here it is. They just launched a really cool kick-ass tap room, too, that I got to check out this weekend. But
yeah, I saw a picture of you inside of it.
It's so cool. It's so sweet. It's really big and awesome. So before we kind of do like a chapter-by-chapter breakdown, 6 chapters in total. Overall, how'd you feel about the comic book here?
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the visual aspect of the story. Obviously, like that's the intention, being a graphic novel. Right. And these were released as individual comic books, correct?
Yes, this one was.
They are short. They're short little things.
I mean, they're comic books. Comic books are short.
But I guess they just felt very short, I think, because I already knew the story to a certain extent. And that's not a bad thing by any means. It was a really enjoyable, quick read. I read it in the car on my way to Wisconsin, and yeah, it was a fun time. I read it twice in like an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever. But very cool to see the action play out without needing it to be narrated exactly.
Yeah, that's actually one of the biggest things that is both like a strength, and I can also see why people don't like it as much as they like the books, right? Is because part of the love for Red Rising comes from the way that Pierce like narrates action. And with something like a graphic novel, all you have to do is show it. Like all you have to do is physically put the picture on and you draw the action, and it draws our attention. There's a lot of brutality in this that I think kind of gets, you can almost skip over it because you have to like physically look at it as opposed to like just jumping to the next sentence. So that's both a like critique and compliment to kind of the work that Pierce does in writing, but then on top of that, it's a compliment to the art because it tries to tell that same story, using predominantly art. And I think that's also what's so interesting about the audio drama. We also listened to the audio drama for this one, and that is very different and more similar to listening to maybe 3 chapters narrated of regular Red Rising.
Yeah, something like that, right around there. I will say, I think I preferred the novels in style, but I really did enjoy the graphic novel. But
you're saying the regular novels, the Red Rising novels. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think that obviously playing to the strengths of the medium, and it's what Pierce was doing and everything like that. I think that these add kind of nice texture and flavor to the universe, and I think we're definitely going to talk more about some of the texture that it adds for sure. But overall, I thought it was really enjoyable read. I liked the audio drama. I also. And we'll talk about this as we go through specifically some of the different components, but there are points in the audio drama where it diverges so heavily from the graphic novel that it's fairly jarring and also occasionally seemingly wrong from the universe at large. There's at least 1 or 2 instances that I was listening and I was like, that's not the way that it works so far as we've been informed. Mm-hmm. And I know that Pierce obviously had a hand in the graphic novel and probably had final hearsay on all of that, but did he go through the graphic audio? Like, I don't know the extent of kind of the collaboration there, but I have a feeling that there's one section in particular that would be pulled heavily.
I listened to the graphic audio after. I think you did too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I read first, graphic audio after.
I didn't realize that it was divergent at all from the source. So I kept thinking, did I miss pages? Did I skip pages accidentally? What is going on here? And for the most part, it was innocent and just kind of adding flavor to it because you don't get the visuals, so you don't see what's happening, and they need to be able to give you the background to understand what's happening.
Yeah, understand the emotion.
Right. But sometimes it was just entirely additional scenes, and I couldn't even point out to it off the top of my head, but I just know did I miss a chunk of pages here? Or did a page stick together and I just missed it?
That happened to me a couple of times, pages sticking together and missing a page and then being like, wait, why do we jump? And then I'd have to undo the page and go back. But yeah, I felt pretty much the same, in all honesty. I liked a lot of it, and I think that it's a great rendition of the story. It's just a question of how much of. I believe that in general, the Sons of Aries graphic novels are considered canon. The audio drama just feels like it takes a couple of liberties and pushes them a little bit too far in a couple of directions. But again, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it's still really enjoyable. It just brings into the weird question of, is this canon for the audio drama, which is odd because you've got such a discrepancy between the two. So.
As far as canon goes, I really appreciate the more evidence to call it canon within the universe. The introduction by Pierce Brown, which also means, especially because he explicitly calls it out, the razors and the pulse fists, and wanting to see them illustrated. And then now I have an actual this is canonically what the razors should look like. I'm super stoked about it because it's kind of similar to what I had in my mind, a little bit more ribbony, unless I'm thinking almost very thin rat tail whip,
and that's I think what it should look like.
Yeah, but having it like a ribbon that can be coiled pretty easily, like they talk about all the time, makes sense. So,
yeah, the one thing that made it more difficult for me in terms of the graphic novel visualization just a little bit is how thick the hilts were. And that felt like more of a stylistic thing, but it did look like a full-on lightsaber. And I was like, how would you turn the razor wrapped around your arm into something stylistic and then just have the handle dangling there? That's a little weird. But that was my only visual complaint, really, I think, in almost the entire graphic novel, to be honest.
My one sort of comeback to that, I guess, would be the fact that they're big enough to hide things within. Like Lysander hid things inside of it, so it's got to have some bulk to it.
Yeah, there's a little compartment in the bottom, right, that he hid the ring in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fair. It does have to have something to it. So maybe it is lightsaber sized. I
don't know. But yeah, that did stick out to me a little bit too. Like, that looks pretty bulky.
That's pretty chunky. Yeah. Yeah. No, but overall, very good. Definitely liked it quite a bit more than I thought. You know, one of the things that I cannot compliment enough is replicating a lot of that very sharp dialogue. And that's also one of the things that the audio drama, when it added dialogue, it did it incredibly in the style of Pierce Brown. Every bit of added dialogue in the audio drama was fantastic. It was sharp, it was witty, it was great, and also the graphic novel, fantastic. The art style, of course, I think is one of the things that a lot of people inside the community talk about, and kind of somewhat turning them off. But I think that it's very intentional, and the choice of artists here is very intentional to be this like gritty, sharp lines, this sort of. You know, it's not clean like you might imagine like a Blade Runner comic probably would be, you know, with like mists and whatnot in the background. And this is a dark world, and it's almost reminiscent of, you know, scratchings in a way. And like that scratching style makes me feel like the Romans in space kind of thing a little bit, you know, where it's not cleanly hewn. And, you know, I don't know. I just had that thought when I was kind of going through. I really liked it. Personally.
Yeah, I had no issue with it at all.
Yeah.
I could see how, especially when the characters are kind of in the background and is really sort of out of focus, I could see how that could turn some people off, but it didn't bother me at all.
Yeah. I mean, comics, of course, have kind of that medium of being able to have things in the background and have things kind of distantly out of focus and have those different kind of components to them. But I think this did it really well. For instance, I was on a different podcast talking about the Dark Tower comic books, and I obviously will not be talking plot at all of that. But one of the complaints that I have about the Dark Tower comic books is a lot of the time the background will just be a single color pastel that's kind of like faded, and then you'll just have like hyper detailed characters in front. And I'll tell you what, I would take this 9 times out of 10 over the way that the Dark Tower comics appear. Although I still really like them, and I still love the art style, and oh my god, there's some like incredible work going on there, but it seems like I just wanted more out of the backgrounds to some degree. So I was glad to kind of get both, even if it was, you know, sometimes indiscriminate.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
there were a couple times that I actually pointed out to you, I'm like, what's going on here? Because it looks like that should be that character, but they just kind of look similar. Like that did happen a couple times to me, but
yeah. And I think that the one that you're talking about is the scene with, when they're in the Institute with the 2 kids from Diana that are running in and then get ambushed by Varden, like, what's his first name? Alturius and Fitchner. So they're ambushed by the house, right? And they get themselves killed. That's one thing that the audio drama definitely helped with, but that was also similarly my biggest sticking point of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
But the audio drama made it very clear. It's like two runaways from House Diana or something like that. And it was very much like, yeah, it was very clear.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. I dug it. So with that, any other kind of overarching thoughts that you want to get out of the way? I mean, we'll probably return to this at the end after we talk about it, but...
Yeah, let's return later. I think for now I'm good.
Cool. All right. So Chapter 1 is obviously our introduction here to the entire conceit that we're finding. Chapter 1 is called Child on the Rock. So... this story starts off with us kind of in medias res to some degree, especially because we return to the beginning moment of this way later. So it's definitely in medias res, with Fitchner and a group abducting a gold for a reason. And then we kind of get a series of flashbacks. We understand his life. We get a lot of picture and color. What do you think of the intro here?
Heist shit. I love it.
Right?
Like, man, it was invigorating right away. But if we want to go chronologically, instead of starting right away in medias res, as you say, I'm not that pretentious, so in the middle.
Son of a bitch.
No, but Child on a Rock. That's exactly what happened to Adrius, right?
Yeah.
Was it for this reason?
Pretty sure.
But he wasn't that, like, scrawny.
No, he was scrawny.
Was he?
Like, he wasn't, like, physically deformed in the same way that he was, but he was a much smaller child.
Okay.
And so he was left on the rock in the same kind of way.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it was very cool to see and very visual, very evocative on the page, too. I loved that.
There's obviously I think this is something that was added in the audio drama as well, was the questioning of if his mother put up a fight over it. Or is that in the graphic novel?
I feel like that was in the audio drama, not the graphic novel,
okay,
if I remember correctly. Because we don't see a whole lot of his parents.
Right.
Outside of, like, the one flash to them, like, sitting in front of the HC and whatnot there. And, like, being like, oh, we have a peerless scar in the family. We're gonna make it. We'll do it. But, yeah. Other than that, we don't see a whole lot of Fitchner's parents.
Mm-hmm. It seemed like he didn't really care if they cared or not, for the most part. So it was odd to have that sort of like, boo-hoo, did they even put up a fight for me? Because he seemed more callous than that.
I mean, I think he's callous because he reflected on it, being like, did they,
That's a good point.
Yeah. Because he's like, I don't think they did, because they didn't fucking want me. They're barely proof that they want me now,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's fair.
Definitely a bad family home life.
Mm-hmm.
Which you also makes sense as to why, like, we start to look at, like, the handed down trauma to Severo and, like, why he values his kids and family so much is because he's trying to feed into and repair some of this generational family trauma that both he and Fitchner experienced.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. One thing, sorry, this is kind of overarching as well. One thing that kind of caught me off guard was the censorship of the swear words. I didn't care that much, but it surprised me.
I thought it was stylized and also intended to ensure that this could go out in mass easily. Mm-hmm. So obviously, just with the number of swear words, they would have to, if you flip on the back, it says T for teen. They would have to obviously market it differently and sell it. And I'm sure there are restrictions that I'm unaware of inside of the comic book industry at large. I just know that there are obviously imprints for those kind of things specifically. So it might have meant that it wouldn't get ordered into shops. And so they kind of kept it. But you got the first letter of every word, and they stylistically dashed it out for the most part. We still got our gory dams and bloody dams in there, so
yeah,
it was kind of like, I was like, this is a sacrifice that you made to put it in the medium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it made sense.
But the audio drama went full bore, man. They added a bunch of swear words.
That's true. Mm-hmm. So the crew that he's with, there's obviously his sister-in-law, Rihanna.
Yep,
Rihanna.
Yep, Rihanna, I think. Something like that.
Silax.
Yep.
Silax. And then there's a couple others that I can't remember the names.
Phoenix and Doran.
Yes.
Yep. I think it's Phoenix. Yeah, Phoenix.
And they abduct, weirdly, Selenius. Not spelled the same, but that threw me off right away. I'm like, did I read this wrong?
That's interesting. I wasn't even paying attention to that. I was like, oh, they just abducted like some bronzy. And this is one of the problems that I had with the audio drama, is that I was like, oh, they abducted some bronzy who's going to the brothel and sleeping with pinks, and it's a regular fucking gold. How cool. A regular gold's in charge of something. We can kind of get a picture of this. And then the audio drama goes, like he says something about him being a peerless guard, and I was like, fuck, why? Why'd you have to ruin that for me? Of which I don't know what to believe in this case. This is one of the two cases where the audio drama pushed me just a little bit.
I mean, we get a detailed up close look of his face as he's getting shot. We can see if there's a scar.
I didn't think there was. It looked like his jawline. And I spent a long time looking and staring, and I'd be very curious as to listeners who have read this for the first time, or who are reading this, to look at his face in each of the individual shots, because as I went through, none of those lines looked to be anywhere near similar the scar on Fitchner's. In particular, on like the fourth page or something like that, on the left side, or okay, from Child of the Rock, 1, 2. This is why this is so difficult to do.
Yeah,
this one.
I'm looking at the same one. I don't think so.
I don't think so. And they said that it was purely scarred in the audio drama. And it was like, no, that scar is supposed to go like down across your cheekbone. And you can literally see it so clearly on Fitchner's face and Varden's face when he gets it, Alturius's face, when they're delivered at Post Institute, that I was like, no, that's not it at all.
And you're not going to just abduct a Peerless Guard like that either.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I didn't think he was a Peerless Guard, but he might be. So
yeah, maybe.
Who knows? I just wanted to believe that he was a rich plain old gold.
That's what he seems like he should be.
Yeah, right? Yeah, so anyway, minor complaint. But I believe I'm going to go with he's a plain old gold and ignore the audio drama here because of a grievous error that they make later that I do not think is acceptable that we'll talk about when we get there once again. But
the Selenius thing was confusing. It's a C, not an S, but still.
You'd imagine it being like Kalenius or Kalenius. Maybe this is one of those things where maybe Pierce was like made fun of for how he spelled Selenius, and so decided to spell it the correct Roman way, and then like put it in to like
maybe
like be fucky about it, because that again feels like a thing that Pierce would do for Shiggles. But yeah. So we obviously get our massive heist set up. We get the childhood of Fitchner. We get into the beginning of the Institute. But we end before we meet Alturius, who we've already talked a lot about. Do you have anything else in the first chapter, first book? I think it's a great introduction. I think it introduces people to the world really well. But
like we said, they should probably have read the books before
the first 3 books.
So, but if they hadn't, it's really well done laying out all the colors. Like right away, page 2 or something, there's the lineup of all the colors, which I found to be really cool.
That was one of my favorite things, is that like 2-page prologue. That's like, here's the universe, here's what it is, here's the conquering. You see that photo of an iron rain, that's cool. With where Child on a Rock is, like, ooh my god, that was great.
Yeah, exactly. And all the lineup of all the colors was, I think, my favorite drawing, especially because of the looks on their faces. If you really look closely at them, the gold's the only one smiling.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great,
funny, because everyone else is being punished effectively in some capacity, or being enslaved in some way. The other component here that I really liked, that I should mention here, we can mention it here since we're at the beginning. Throughout this novel, or graphic novel, when you're reading it, it's ingenious to color all of the speech bubbles as the color of the color, and that adds to the kind of the people behind the masks kind of conversation that's going on, and lets you communicate that so easily.
Wouldn't have understood it otherwise.
Yeah, you'd have had no way to know. And I think that's it. Could have been fun to leave like the first several, like you could almost leave the first book for the most part uncolored when they're behind the masks, and then have them reveal and have them be colored. I could see that being a decision, but I think it's better because they don't pull them off until the very end. For the most part, and we get their names, so we know their colors anyway, at different points. So, yeah, I just thought that was great. I loved the coloring and how that like indicated position very easily in my mind, and I knew there was just such good association there. The number of conversations that other low colors have constantly, and the kind of the focus here, is one of the best parts of this entire novel. Is despite Fitchner being our lead, we have the entire heist team, which is composed of different colors and lives, has a huge impact on the story. And then on top of that, we get red and reds talking, we get gray and reds interacting, we get all of these different layers that it feels like it communicates an iron gold like story in the fact that we get so many different characters, layered in different ways. With that, let's move into chapter 2, Now/Then, which I love. One of the things that I really like about the story on the whole is how it uses kind of these interstitial moments, uses the action of the heist to kind of guide us through Fitchner's backstory, and these intercuts back and forth. Feels very Guy Ritchie. Like very Guy. It's heisty too, It's like, it's very Guy Ritchie.
What heist thing isn't going to feel like Guy Ritchie to me, though? Like...
Yeah, well, like Ocean's 11, doesn't feel Guy Ritchie, like
that's true.
I just imagine this in kind of that styling. Yeah, especially because it's gritty. It reminds me of kind of Wrath of Man in its own way, in kind of the stakes, I guess, of sort of the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Anyway, I love the kind of intercut here that we get between the Institute, the Obsidians that are catching them after killing what's his name, Selenius, and getting the code for the cipher so that they can get in, to what we later learn is the Border Quality Control, which is cool. That we're kind of exploring that more. That was awesome. Yeah, what do you think of Now Then, kind of in general?
As you mentioned, the interstitials was just so cool. Having that peek into what molded Fitchner and how he changes. Like he's this scrawny dude at the Institute, much in the same way that we first saw Darrow in the intro to Red Rising, with the speech being given by the Archgovernor. Same Archgovernor, by the way.
Same Archgovernor, probably the same speech every year, huh?
Yep, I'd think so. But he's like whispering to himself, I'm ready. Like he's super into this shit. And he's not quite that jaded yet. But he gets broken very quickly.
Yeah, I really can't emphasize enough how much I liked, and I didn't think that I would enjoy this as much as I did, that I liked a second pass at the Institute. And seeing it again from different perspective was completely different. It was a wild. You obviously aren't aware of this. Hunger Games, again, Hunger Games Book 1 tackles the Hunger Games. Hunger Games Book 2 tackles a second Hunger Games in which old participants are forced to compete in it. So it kind of feels like, those things were direct sequels. There's enough time removed here from like point A to point B from our reading journey that this is cool to see again. Like this is a fun time to like be re-immersed in sort of the bloody tradition, and also potentially how it's changed, because the drafters seem to form the teams afterwards in the comic book. It wasn't perfectly clear.
Well, so he throws the ring down and says, "There's one spot left in my house."
Yeah, but I don't think he was drafted beforehand. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't drafted into the house beforehand, and then was like chosen secretly to be a part of House Mars, and then throws
actually after he wins in the passage, after he survives the passage, they say that he put him in House Mars.
Yeah,
how did it go before? They were drafted into houses, and then the passage happened.
Yep.
This, it seems like there's one spot left in my house, doesn't reveal what the house is, and then he's in House Mars.
But there's the ring. Yeah. He does drop the ring, and then Fitchner's whole thing with like dropping the ring in blood. Again, another great ad of the audio drama when he drops the ring in blood and then puts it on his hand bloody. Oh, I loved that. Yeah. I loved that.
Yeah.
Just kind of that acknowledgement of what he's choosing to become. Juicy. Yeah. Other thoughts? Did you obviously there's that fucking kid that's bullying him that he then gets the fucking kill, which is great.
Yeah. But it seemed like in Red Rising, they were unaware of the passage.
Mm-hmm.
And in this one, they all knew that it was coming.
So what was interesting is that, and for the most part, I think you're kind of right. He knew that Fitchner didn't know that the passage was happening, Fitchner knew almost nothing about the Institute. Almost nothing. However, Alturius did know just about everything about the Institute. And that was a revelation between the two of them that happened afterwards. The reason I say that is because it's not in speech bubbles. Some of the other kids knew, just like some of the other kids knew before. In Darrow's year, some of the kids knew what the passage was going to be. It's the rich kids. It's the cheaters. It's the same kind of group. But Fitchner didn't know.
So here it is.
Page this one.
When he first gets dropped in, he said, "Do you know what this is? The passage, correct? Blah blah blah." And then in the not actual speech, the monologue, you hear about it in whispers. A nightmare no one can explain. It was then that I learned why. But I think in the audio drama, they say every gold child knows about the passage.
Yeah, I think, but it also says except me, or like except every rich gold. I think there's something on there that says that not everyone knows, but all of these golds knew.
Okay,
but I'm an outsider, and so like I had no clue.
But
it was something like that. Yeah,
when he's getting bullied, it says something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, the passage will sort that, or the passage will sort it quick."
Yeah. So, which again is another component of like the rich kids know, but yeah,
that makes sense.
Which is also what happened to Darrow.
That's a good point. But for me, when I read the book, because we're strictly locked in Darrow's perspective, it felt like it was a completely like nobody knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. And also, if people understood that the passage exists, hypothetically, you'd think the Bolognas would know pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Cassius wouldn't take that much offense if he knew what was coming.
Well, Cassius wasn't going to take offense until he knew that Darrow lied. That, again, is one of the core arguments that we got into all the way back in Red Rising, is it's not just the killing of Julian, it's also the lie, and then perpetuating that and killing Titus, and like...
Yeah, but he showed
it still
rage
would have
for
fragmented
it.
their friendship.
He showed rage for it
their friendship
towards Titus when he thought it was Titus.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think he still would have been mad, without a doubt. I just don't think it would have been as bad, quite as bad to him as egregious.
That's perfectly true. That's definitely true. But I don't know. I'm trying to grip what the actual like thing is, because
knowledge ramifications are. Yeah. Because there was a note somewhere in Red Rising, and I'm only doing this because I have a friend who's rereading it now, and she keeps asking me questions, and I'm like, oh god, I have to re-immerse myself in that first book, and I've forgotten now she's in the second book and almost done, and I'm like, oh god, was it Aries or was it Dancer that said that? And it's like, look it up. I had to look it up, but yeah, that I also was reading back on this, and there was a note somewhere about him. It might have been even in Golden Sun, where it's like he had to have known that Julian wasn't going to make it because Julian was the softer of the two twins. Like he was not going to, he's never going to make it out. And like that, I think Roke says something like that at one point.
Okay.
I feel like
I
that's
don't
right,
recall that, but
yeah, something like that. I don't know. But,
and I mean, especially that first book, let's not pretend Pierce's like train of thought is ironclad. Like, he forgets shit all the time.
It's gotten better, and you know, there's a line of consistency that you can draw at the very least,
also this kind of gives him a chance to reapproach that sort of those early stages, reapproach the Institute with some perspective of what like this world's been, or this universe has been bouncing around in his head for a lot longer. This kind of gives him the chance to set it straight a little bit. So,
which I think is, I think it's a great way for him to kind of be able to go through this and, you know, talk about it that way.
Yeah.
Could not agree more. I really like kind of the way that this sets all that up. So, we're also introduced to the eventual rival of Fitchner, Arturius, and the house of Varden, Al Varden, the good friend who teaches Fitchner how to run and when to turn around and fight. And, you know, in a lot of ways, feels like Cassius, feels like Roke, feels almost interspersed maybe into that house a little bit, given the age and his working at the Board of Quality Control. He has to know Roke's mom, probably. I didn't mean to bring Roke into this, but I thought about the Board of Quality Control again, brain. But, yeah. What'd you think of Arturius?
For me, this felt like Cassius.
Yeah.
Right away. Like initially this felt like this is Fitchner's Cassius. Mm-hmm. And that changes a little bit right after graduation. Obviously. Like his motivations, his partying, his what would you call it?
He's got disobedience
to his mom.
Right?
Like, shit like that.
He's kind of like a spoiled kid.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't think we ever really see much of that from Cassius. So that's where they diverge. But within the Institute, he is definitely the more knowledgeable about what it means to be here and really makes Fitchner survive. Because I don't think he would have made it without some assistance.
It very much seems like it was you know, he was fighting to survive, but again, I don't think he would have came out with a peerless scar at the very least without Arturius' help. That's also the point of the Institute, is your strength in making friends and finding friends and whatnot too. So I do find it interesting, of course, that he isn't made a slave, you know, in the same kind of way.
Yeah, not officially.
Yeah, right.
But he talks about that. Like he
even says slave in all but name, I think. I think that's like literally the quote. Yeah.
Yeah, because he gets his peerless scar by being subjugated, essentially.
Yeah, joining House Jupiter.
Being the more or less lackey of Arturius.
Yeah.
You kind of see that with Darrow in a weird way. Like you see that parallel too. Like, he's got all these people following him, and it's not so much the same effect, but from the outside looking in, it kind of is. Like, these are kind of people doing his bidding. They're following his lead.
You could throw Severo into that mix too, within reason, right? Like with eventually with the Howlers and him running away on his own from House Mars, basically, because he didn't think that he would be accepted, is very kind of similar to how Fitchner leaves House Mars when he sees it being destroyed. You know, he's not strictly wanking off in the bushes, but he did run away.
Yeah. It was fun.
Yeah.
I just had a blast.
It's a fun time. Yeah.
I had a blast reading through all the flashbacks and stuff.
It was really brutal, but it was fun. Like, I had a good time, even though like there was a lot of brutality. One of the small things that the audio drama added was a little bit about medbots and like them wearing down and saving kids, and like they really added to the Institute part a lot in the audio drama, and I liked it. I liked that contribution a lot. It thickened up the story quite a bit there.
I think that's the main point where I kept thinking, like, did I miss things? Because it really fleshed it out a lot more.
Yeah, it was almost an entire additional issue of comics, it felt like in terms of context. Like, it was so much additional context that I enjoyed. So, yeah, I like that. Of course, we kind of end this section somewhat with the breakup, like we said, between Arturius and Fitchner. And then we go into Fitchner heading to Triton via Quicksilver, which is a big deal, right?
Right.
And we also resume our little jaunted quest after getting the scars and whatnot, blah blah blah. We jump back to Fitchner absolutely destroying the Obsidians, the two Obsidians, like just murking them, which I thought was really cool to see that kind of depiction of violence, of like jumping between and then clubbing one and then razoring the other, and that fight scene was sweet, depicted on page.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about the razor fight scenes in Red Rising, or in the Red Rising saga. And they're all so, for good reason, because it's so satisfying to read, but they're very wordy and flowery in detail, because he's spending pages describing something that takes like a couple seconds. And this was just swift, but seeing the razor go from kind of whip shape to straight saber, like rapier, did it for me, man. Like, I loved it.
Yeah. On top of that, some of the imagery here, the one piece of image that really got me in this entire issue was when we're staring at the brains of the Obsidian and it blends into the stars right before the issue ends, and you flip into issue 3 and you're like, Jesus Christ, like that looks gross and is awesome. And again, this is where I think that any adaptation will excel, is kind of taking brutality and blending it effectively into the world. I think this also shows that you could add scenes to Red Rising that are other versions of violence that you'd have to, in order to, like you said, kind of extend the duels and make it approachable to screen. You have to make it more grandiose almost even than it's portrayed, because it can't all just be, one-on-one razor duels. And I think this is a great example.
And especially because those one-on-one razor duels, if you really like take the time to sort of pace it out and see what's happening, it's like 3 or 4 moves. It's like whoop whoop, head's gone.
Yeah. And I think you could definitely stretch it out for the sake of stretching it out where it needs to be. You like the duel with Aja is not going to go quick. Let's be real. That's a grind. That's a fight. That's going to be ridiculous when, if ever, it's depicted. The duel with Cassius again will be similar, but there are a number of combats that should just be whoop whoop boom, and you can see that being depicted a-okay. I think it's something that gets minimized a lot in adaptation anyway, is like they do cut down fight scenes because it takes so many more words to describe, versus a picture 1,000 words, blah, 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 stupid. But yeah. So we move into chapter 3, The Drowning of Titan. I know that I just said that one of my favorite things graphically, visually in this graphic novel is the brain of the Obsidian, but my next favorite is the second page of issue 3 when they're all vertical panels and it's the group climbing up the ladder, and as they're climbing up the ladder gradually fades and the only thing you can see is the Aries mask, and then on top of that it gradually rolls in the starship as it's approaching Titan, and you're like, that's a perfect fucking scene transition. That's how you transition in a fucking movie, dudes. Like that was perfect. That's how I'd want to see that depicted on screen. Holy shit, how fucking cool. But yeah, the drowning on Triton, this is where the audio drama really got me. And I was like, I need to see this adapted so bad. When we cut in, we land, we're introduced to a lot of things. We see the Obsidians walking around for the first time. And then the audio drama cuts to like throat singing in the background as Fitchner's narrating about the lives of the Obsidians. And I was like, please, I want more. This is so good. I want that culture depicted on screen so badly. Gimme it, gimme.
Yep.
But yeah, the depiction of Triton, in addition, is fantastic. Anything that you liked? Any particulars?
Just going off of Obsidian culture and how them in general.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I really liked. I don't know what I think about the way that they were depicted visually. I guess I don't.
They kind of look like a bag of rags.
They do. But also, they are jacked. And yes, they're strong, but I always like imagine them so much more lithe, you know? Like I imagine
more
them,
mountainish.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I imagine them scrawny a little bit. Like strong, but kind of weirdly scrawny looking. That's what I have in my head a little bit.
I think a couple of the females were very scrawny, and some of this might be dissonance because we spent so much time with female Obsidians, but
but also
because a lot of them were described as scrawny.
Tongueless was also super scrawny.
But I think that was because he
was the sort of exception as this like jacked giant, like roided out Obsidian.
Well, he's like the mountain of Obsidians, you know what I mean? Like he's there are Obsidians, and then there's Ragnar. Which, you know, very, very cool. Love Ragnar. Love the whole thing. But yeah, I do feel you. I think that some of that is like keeping them in, again, the later depictions that we see of Obsidians in the series, because they aren't really introduced until like hardcore. We don't really see Obsidians until Golden Sun, and we really see Obsidians with the introduction of Ragnar, of course, in Golden Sun. But we really see the culture, and we get a lot of comparisons in Morningstar. So, you know, I feel like this keeps them subtle enough and in the background and kind of mysterious and strange for the comic book's sake, because the Obsidians aren't playing a huge role.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, we don't really have any Obsidian talking, I think, in the entire. We do in the audio drama, but we don't in. In the books.
That's the other thing. In the Institute in Red Rising, is it Obsidians that bring them down? It is. Yep. Okay, I thought it was just like older students.
Nope, Obsidians.
Okay, because I know they are in this because you see their sigils and shit. But yeah, seeing the Lovelock engine too, and seeing this terraform in process, and like having that described, and kind of seeing that whole kind of component going on, I thought was really cool. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it. It was fantastic. This is like what you kind of want out of a Red Rising prequel, right? Like another prequel that you want is to like see the terraforming of Mars. Well, here's a different way of giving you that without specifically giving you the terraforming of Mars, you know? Right. Yeah. And they're very clear, like this is what all the planets go through. Kind of seeing the birth of it. Yeah. Loved it. And if only it was a little bit more stable, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, most of the story wouldn't have happened if it was more stable. But obviously that whole thing explodes. That's a big deal because it kills the steward, the gold steward that's leading around fucking Fitchner as he's going around on Triton. And then on top of that, he makes in that moment, he realizes to go against the instinct that Arturius, is it Arturius? My brain keeps fucking it up. Arturius that Arturia says, which is to like run away from these until you can turn back and face it properly. And he decides that he's going to jump in and handle this situation. And so this is his pivotal moment before he even meets Bryn, but he does the right thing. And because he does the right thing, he meets Bryn and has for the first time in his life really a truly great change of luck and fortune.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for a bit.
The tragedy of Fitchner only is worse when you remember how he fucking dies in Golden Sun. So, like, it doesn't... The problem is... However, what this also tells me is that you could very easily... You know, this entire graphic novel also reads like a self-contained TV episode, or maybe like TV episodes. You might even piece two together as like one single episode, and tells you what you could get away with in like a flashback episode, and like what you could tell about like Iona Bologna, which I think I brought up in like every episode in the last 4 weeks.
I never don't smile anytime you say that name. I find it funny. It's a funny name. It's a very funny name.
Well, I was sitting here questioning. I was like, how old is Nero? I forgot how old Nero was. You know, I was one of those details that just had fallen out of my head. He's like 98.
Is he really?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
So I was like, oh yeah. It also makes sense. Like it didn't. I was like, of course he is like he's 93. But like still,
I mean, better.
Point stands.
It's a little better. I guess.
It's a 5-year difference. But yeah, I think that it makes it for a very interesting talking point again, that like Nero's been in power for so long at this point. And even I think it's in book 4 when they go back to Mars, like we have the speech of Nero Augustus greeting them as they're landing. And oh man, it's also reminiscent of Mustang's speech to Lyria as she's not that she's giving it, but you know, the announcement.
And like separately, Fitchner's 19, I think, when he meets Bryn.
Mm-hmm.
19. Yeah, so he's 20 when Severo's born. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a stark difference compared to Mustang and Nero.
Yeah, right. So, very, very giant age gap there. Although,
that's like
keep in mind,
3 generations.
Have an entire wife in there. Yeah, fair point. Yeah, fuck. Dude, oh man, ouch, ouchie mama. All right, so obviously going back to the Reds, this is a huge deal for him, and I think it also obviously sets up his understanding and love of people and belief that the society could be wrong here, because why aren't we going out to save these people? Because the other guy made such a big deal about them being, you know, so expendable and cheap. That he decides that lives are worth it, and then meets one that is so important to him that this is the foundation of Aries. Like this is, you know, it doesn't build to an extreme point yet, but we're setting the foundation effectively for Aries. Yeah, big deal. What do you think of the Red Society on Triton?
It didn't have the teeth that Mars did. Like there weren't as surly a people, I guess, and kind of lacked an identity in general. I felt like everything that I felt from the Reds within the graphic novel, I feel like I was completely projecting from my knowledge of Reds in Red Rising,
which is fair to do.
Yeah,
fair point. You'd expect, are these low Reds or are these high Reds? That's a question for sure.
I guess they're technically high Reds
on the surface,
since they're on the surface.
One would potentially assume that they would be high Reds, but based on their like labor status, I don't know. They might be low Reds because these are early colonizers. These are actually what the low Reds on Mars are being lied to about doing. You know, like in Mars, they're lying to them, saying that the mining is going to bring about, and this is like them actually bringing it about. So it is interesting. It is also interesting because the Reds that we know are so baked into mining culture because they're Martian Reds that, you know, is this, should we have gotten, like you said, a better picture of like a slightly different culture? I mean, we do get like the funeral pyre, which is different for, you know, sending them off to the Veil, but holistically is entirely different. I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, though. I don't know if that makes sense to me. This is a new world. They're newly terraforming it, but they came from somewhere. Like, presumably these were Reds that were shipped from maybe Mars.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. They also, like, even if they were terraforming it for a generation, you'd still expect some form of cultural traditions outside of, we do see or three. We see the wedding, we see the funeral, and we see
the veil.
The veil, yeah.
Yeah. The wedding was also,
pretty nondescript, again. But
pretty nondescript. That's a good way to put it. I just felt like the red culture is so rich because we're so immersed in it right away in the novel, that it just kind of felt lost here.
Yeah.
And I wanted more of it.
That's definitely fair. I think a fun part of this too, we obviously do lose some, and that's a big deal. But one of the things that I found that was very fun is obviously, we kind of skipped over this, but like Bryn and Fitchner meet up because they're both being treated by Yellows, Medici, from the incident. I really love that. Obviously, we get to see Yellows. Like, we get a little bit of Yellows. We get, like, very little. But, it's nice to see kind of the functions and how they help out different colors differently. The Violet coming and also doing some medical duty, which makes sense. We've seen and heard that before. So it's not like Yellow's, like, maybe seed the arm and then Violet's carve it. Makes for a very interesting component. And then also, like, the differences in treatment, where in Bryn, at the very least, gets a, artificial limb, but... prosthetic, not artificial, but yeah.
Yeah, I thought there'd be a little bit more monologue, I guess. More internal monologue from Fitchner about that. Because that seems like something he would really kind of go off on. Based on...
About the disparity between the two?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of those things about this graphic novel versus, a fully fleshed out maybe novella or something of that nature, is you would probably see more here. And there's an assumption a lot of times in graphic novels and in visual mediums that you as the reader are connecting the dots, and that you're noticing that, this is a red versus a gold. The hierarchy would say that this is a thing. And again, I think that to kind of our collected point that we've been discussing so far, you shouldn't read this first. There are a ton of reasons that you shouldn't read this first. And one of them is this sort of understanding that we're saying, if this were a first pass on a project, you would want to make that very clear about the disparity of treatment. And it doesn't, because I think it's supposed to be subtextual to some degree to us, as readers being like, this is obviously a subtext that Fitchner is frustrated with. But
it gets as far as him like explicitly asking about it, but it doesn't go into his thoughts.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a good point.
It's a small thing, but I agree with you. I think that that's just a difference in a medium, and also you wouldn't really get it if, you didn't there. One of the things that I also really like about this is the way that it pieces out the introduction of Fitchner's crew over the course of the story. And here is also where we get introduced to Doran and Rihanna. Not Rihanna, but Rihanna.
Rihanna.
R-Y-A. Yeah, it's not Rihanna, but I think it's Rihanna. I think that's a fun way to introduce the crew, right? Like a heist, you generally are recruiting people in over time. This is instead like slow introductions, and we understand why each one of them is involved by kind of the end of the story.
Mm-hmm. And their own individual motivations to a certain extent.
Yeah, right. Like Doran's in because Rihanna's in. Rihanna's in because of Bryn. Silax is in because he wants money, I think. He's one of Quicksilver's boys. Phoenix is Fitchner's assigned Quicksilver assistant that he like eventually paid for as his own like personal friend, bodyguard dude. But those
paid for as his own personal friend.
Yeah, Grays. They're pay for friends. Buy a friend. I would like to buy Ephraim for a friend, please.
Okay.
He's just bits now. But you know what else we get here, PJ? In this graphic novel, we get our second canonical sex scene that's more than just we had sex in Blackout page that we got from Darrow and Mustang, of which I'm still grumpy about. But we get like, they're intimate. There's a relationship. For a book of which we said was already kind of like, why are you blacking out the swear words? They have a sex scene inside. But yeah. I mean, obviously we know that they have sex because they have a kid, but...
Do we, though? Because I think this is audio drama again. The Carver's the one deciding the gender of the baby.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if the baby was born out of sex at all.
I think you're right. The other part of this that is a little bit confusing is this is an audio drama thing again. They mention like going back and forth all the time, as opposed to like going back and forth to go like sneak in to see him, and that's not something that's in the graphic novel. They only go the once to set it all up and to do the womb thing. And again,
do the womb thing.
To get the womb changed and to make sure that the sperms do the womb thing. That it's all compatible. Which also, the other part of this graphic novel that this actually kind of sorts out a little bit is some of our arguments a little bit. It doesn't fully, but at the very least it made a very good case for the reason that they aren't really different species, and it reminded me of a core point, right? Which is that the gestation cycles are dramatically altered with drugs, not naturally occurring processes. So they are effectively drugging people to have them at different cycles to ensure that they are specific sizes for the adaptations that they need them for. So that was another small thing that my brain was like, oh yeah, duh. I fucking can't believe I forgot that. But I think it's also like a one-off line. But it was made a really big point here because obviously it's critical to why Bryn and Fitchner can't have kids and are so different. So, yeah. That was brought up, I think, in the first section, Child in a Rock. They were talking about that.
Yeah, I think
golds have to carry 9 months to term. Other colors have gestating drugs, stuff like that. But yeah, sex scene. We love it. We love it. Here is my number one problem with the audiobook, though. You ready? You fucking ready for it? It is this, and I wrote it down. You can fuck a red, but you can't marry or liaison one. And that's just not true. You cannot fuck a red. There's no context in which it has ever been described as okay to sleep with a low color outside of a pink. Ever.
Right.
So far as I'm aware. Not once. It was supposed to be, it was like Shane. There was, and maybe it's because we're peerless scars again. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's a part of the problem again, is we're just sitting in that like elite hubbub of society. But I seriously.
And it doesn't show up in the comic.
Nope. Yep.
I would go as far to say as you're right. There's a line from Quicksilver. Because it's a small matter to bed a low color, but marrying one?
It doesn't sound like it's legal still.
It's a small matter as in probably not worth death, but it doesn't sound like it's
acceptable. Right. Right. The usage of the word to fuck a low color is okay, but not to marry or liaison one, which is an adaptation of the line that's given before in the previous chapters, what I find to be the screwiest bit of lore on top of this whole thing. Because it's never been mentioned that anyone would fuck a different color, ever, with the exception of these mutant hybrids that have been made very clear to be mutants. Yeah. And what?
And pinks.
And pinks, right. So
I'd be curious to see what the actual, I'd be curious to see what Pierce actually says about that. What his actual, headcanon.
That would be a reasonable question. It was never really brought up before, but it felt so clearly wrong by all their standards that when I heard that, I literally paused it, I rewound it, played it, paused it, rewound it, played it, paused it, picked up my comic book, rewound it, played it, and stared at the comic book. I was like, that's not contextual. There's nothing there to support that. I don't know where you're pulling that from. What are you talking about? That was the only line, though. That was the only thing that really, one of the few things that really tore me out of the audio drama, just being a little bit disconnected from canon.
Which is fine, to be clear. This is an adaptation of a work that Pierce had a hand in, but was not the actual full 100% creator of.
Yeah, it's 3 steps removed, basically, or 2 steps removed, whichever way you want to think about it.
Yeah. So it's completely forgivable to me, as long as it's not being presented as a canonical work.
Yeah, the audio drama, right. Again, it's not a massive sticking point, and I wouldn't bet my house on this or or anything crazy on this. But
this is us getting into screaming nerd territory about canon and feeling.
You're right.
Feeling possessive of a story that we didn't write. So is whatever. But at the same time, we spent a lot of time here, and we've dedicated a lot of We've dedicated almost a year to this story itself.
More than a year at this point, but yeah. The only other thing, so obviously this chapter we move home with the idea of obviously they get married. They're making kind of that decision to move in together and to bring Rihanna with to Mars. That's a big sticking point for Mama Bryn. Yeah, so we basically end this heading there, but we do cut back to the heist. Mm-hmm. And in the graphic novel, there's the Devourers. And that was odd. Mm-hmm. Reading in the graphic novel, I was like, what the fuck is this shit? Even though I know violets, I was like, is this what because they're like semi-humanoid, and I was like, they feel like they felt like the mutated obsidian that we see at the end of Dark Age. Mm-hmm. Very similar.
But before we get to that, mentioning the fact that he's bringing Bryn off-world, is it just in the audio drama? Or is it in the graphic novel as well? Because at this point, I'm having trouble keeping them straight.
No, they bring both. Yeah.
No. Oh, where Bryn explicitly says, like, am I just going to be a pet that can't leave and can't hold your hand and can't, like, walk in the park with you?
No, Bryn says that in the graphic novel. Yeah. Not right. So, like, I don't think it's quite that long, because I think that dialogue goes on longer in the audio drama, but it is textually, it's in the...
Yeah, because it's almost exactly the same as what she's complaining about later, and
what eventually like, happens.
What do you think was going to happen? Like, and that feels shitty, you know? But it is what it is.
It also feels like a 19-year-old's promise, which I think is another interesting component here. You know?
That's true.
Like,
that's true.
Yeah. Because he was definitely like, well, what did you think was going to happen? And it's like, well...
you promised it would.
But, yeah.
But at the same time, he doesn't ever say, like, yes to those things.
Yeah. Right. But he does take her sister and brings her along, too. You know, at the very least, like, there's that. She's got a playmate.
Jesus, that's a bad way to put it, man.
I don't feel good about that joke. I was looking around the room for a long time after I said that out loud. Oops.
Oh, no.
But yeah, the Devourers, I really... That was the strangest one for me, to be honest. From the graphic novels, that was the one thing where I was like, huh. That's actually where the graphic audio did better and explained what violet carved creatures were. And took the time instead of just like putting the Devourers and then like making us kind of question and assume, it then explained that they were carved by violets and what violets do to create things. Kind of gave like the canon explanation for violets. So.
Yeah. I feel like those would show up more often. If there were really humanoid, semi-intelligent like carvings that people knew about.
The audio drama like also
way more
common. That's a good point on people knowing about them. I hadn't thought about that. This was the only thing that I didn't really like about the graphic novel, actually. It was just a little weird. It didn't fit.
It felt odd.
It also felt like it was written for cliffhanger's sake, especially because it comes right at the end of that issue, where it's like, oh, we have a new threat introduced, which is fairly common for comics in general to do something like that. But I feel like he could have done something else in universe.
I wish it would have been like a captured band of the cannibalistic obsidian.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would have done it. With that, we move into Chapter 4, Double Life on Mars. I think I made a little bit of mention of this earlier, but when they land, the similar world building that happens is very similar to what we see with Lyria between Rihanna and Bryn. Is they experience kind of the call of the Archgovernor in this case, which I would compare to Mustangs, you're free, and here's like your future inside of the society. It feels very reminiscent. It feels very sci-fi. It's very evocative. It's great. It reminds us that Nero is the governor here, which is great. I just, it's good.
It's good.
It's a good one.
God.
It's good. I liked it. I like the world building.
Fucking Nero.
Hear me out.
Up until this point, I was thinking we were in a world pre-Nero.
I also was, which is why I looked up his age, for the record.
They talk about robots in this.
Didn't they talk about medbots?
No, there's something bots. Something bots.
The copper says that reds are cheaper than robots. That's what it is, which I think we made mention of a bit ago. Or whoever's talking with him on Triton talks about the expendability of reds over robots.
I was under the impression that Nero was the reason why robots didn't exist.
Nero isn't the reason that robots don't exist. Nero is also very afraid of robots. He is actively against robots because he basically has the problem where he believes that Skynet will come.
Which is a very valid reason.
Right, but Nero has like a fear of robots that is strict, that does not line up strictly with the society's reason that they don't use robots. The reason society doesn't use robots is because it makes more sense to like have this army of subjugated people, and they're more versatile and can be trained for specific tasks and are easier to mold. Yeah. Easier to mold.
Extent.
Yeah, right. So the slave that you can give specific commands is better than, something that someone would have to work on and program and whatnot. So that's why they went that way, basically.
Robots don't have to sleep.
So we move on from there, of course, to actually meeting Regulus, who had been funding, of course, the trip out to Titan, was responsible for kind of his trip. So we meet Quicksilver, right? And one of the things that I found very interesting in reading the comics, and I think this is more of a theory than proven, but it feels like the pink that is standing around Quicksilver in that scene is Mateo. It feels like it's the only logical conclusion.
I didn't think that it'd be anybody else.
Okay, all right. I brought it up in a couple of different forums and contexts, and I was like, I think it's Mateo. And it's like, yeah, I think it especially should be Mateo, because when Quicksilver later threatens him with like the love and affection of a lower color, it's really interesting because Quicksilver is effectively being cheeky with his own relationship in a way that he has with Mateo, right? And then adds some weight to it.
I think there's context that says how long Quicksilver has been with Mateo. And I want to say it's like 35 years.
You might be right. I do not remember the Mateo relationship, but I think that makes sense. And again, I think it makes sense for a ton of reasons, because we also have the connection through the idea that, like, obviously Mateo was helping out Dancer and is like a part of the Rising as well. And once we learn that Quicksilver is a part of the Rising, their connection naturally makes sense. And I think that would be a way to not tie the two ships together in its own way, but to have them kind of communicate effectively.
Yeah. I never got an impression that it was anybody other than Mateo.
Yeah. But it's never mentioned explicitly.
That's true. Yeah. Maybe that's an intentional thought because we meet Mateo so early on in Red Rising. Mm-hmm. Maybe that preserves some sort of like spoilers for somebody that were to read this and then get into the series. Like it's not a big thing, but it's something.
Yeah. Because even at the end, like the end of this is effectively him saying, I am Aries, but we don't really know what Aries is. At this point, you'd have to actually read Red Rising.
No,
to
we
understand.
do. It's early. You hear about Aries. I was constantly wondering if Aries actually existed.
Correct. All that I'm saying is that like you wouldn't know the connection to Quicksilver from the connection to Aries to Mateo. Like you wouldn't backward engineer that entire connection from this interaction that we see in the graphic novel.
Right.
That's more what I meant. But
yeah,
as it goes. I'm not finding anything easily, so I will not comment further on that. But what I would say is that at the very least, this adds a layer to his threat, right? Because he's threatening him because he knows that he can use the fact that he has Bryn here on Mars against him to kind of pull for his needs and pull for his wants with the assassination attempt. But at the same time, he is obviously a complete hypocrite because he's fucking Mateo and like married and wants to marry Mateo and has kind of him in his back pocket. So it's an interesting layer of hypocrisy to like make ends meet, which I only say specifically because it's silver versus gold, right? And that's not kosher with the society standard.
I don't see it as hypocrisy. I see it as sort of not recklessness, but he understands the weight of the situation.
Sure.
And he also understands if somebody were to expose him,
yeah, I mean,
that's a big deal.
He's wielding it like blackmail, right? Like it is blackmail. Mm-hmm. So we do move on from this to the actual scene. Of course, did you have anything else in the reaction between Quicksilver and he, by the way? Did you any other thoughts on Quick?
we do see his vulnerability. Like, he is a smart, well-connected, wealthy person.
Mm-hmm.
Fitchner could have just popped his head.
Yeah, just popped him. Yeah.
And we don't really see that vulnerability from Quicksilver going forward, ever. Like, nobody really physically threatens Quicksilver later on. As far as I can remember.
Like, Mustang kind of does by shooting past him, obviously, and, like, blowing up the sculpture, but that's not, you know.
Yeah.
That's not meant to be a...
That's not the same.
It's intimidation more than anything else, but yeah.
But it was cool. It was a level of vulnerability that I felt like we needed from Quicksilver a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we do move on from Quicksilver, of course, to the job that Quicksilver gives him, which is to be an assassin hunting Theron Al Atler for Quicksilver, of course. This, I think, is a great representation of what we questioned a lot earlier on in the series of what he was doing for Quicksilver, why he was, you know, why he had to go to Quicksilver in the first place. And that's predominantly money. And then on top of that, it's blackmail. And that's the reason that he really has to continue to work for Quicksilver, is that he is aware of Bryn. And that's why you'd have a Peerless Guard be stuck in a situation where he's working far under his station.
Yeah. Yeah, but he called him Sir before he even knew that Quicksilver knew about Bryn.
Yeah, I mean, Fitcher's still a respectful dude.
That's
and, like,
true.
he's Regulus Al's son. He's a huge deal. And he funded his job out. Like, he bought the contract for Fitcher to go work out on.
There's another thing that I feel like was just in the audio drama. The focus on, if we do this together, we could be as wealthy as Julie Eyes.
No, that's a specific line.
They dwell on it quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
In the audio drama.
He says a lot before that in the audio drama, for sure. As opposed to, like, we could just
And
be as
after.
wealthy as fucking Julie Eyes, which is what it says in the graphic novel. Back to Mr. Adler. We go to chasing him down, of course, and we track him down to the opera, of which is Tristan und Isolde by Wagner. Yeah, which is a opera. It's a story about opera.
I'm not familiar.
I am also not familiar, PJ.
Okay.
So I can't be helpful here, but I can tell you that that's the opera. It's in German, as most anything by Richard Wagner is.
That's my best impression.
Yeah, there was no noise, but it was hilarious.
Oh, could you not hear it?
Oh no, there was no noise. Your microphone cut it out.
Definitely noise.
Oh, well, Discord cut it out.
Discord cut it out.
Yeah, Discord was like, that's not PJ's voice.
That's shrill enough that we're pretty sure it's getting our noise gate.
That's perfect. That's hilarious. But obviously, this is the moment that we get inside of the novel, the graphic novel here, that includes piss. It's so important that each book features a brief portion of someone getting pissed on in some fashion, and this keeps that tradition alive.
In a good way,
peeing
though.
on his shoes.
This is in like a fun way.
This is a fun pissing. Not like your brother's pissings. This is a fun pissing.
Honestly, it's expertly done. It's an expertly done way to like get somebody to duel you.
Yeah, pisses on his shoes, and then like he's like, stop it, and he's like, no.
Here, now your pants match.
And then he challenges him to the duel, and then he kind of like backs off. Adler's like, maybe I don't want to duel him. Like, I don't know if it's worth it. And then he's like, nah, yeah, never mind.
I could have seen that being like going either way. Even if he like tried to play the high road and like just fucking ignore him and leave. Like, that could have been the signal to go in and like, fight me, bitch.
Yeah,
like
the impetus to be like, fight me. You said you were going to fight me. We're going to fight now. It's a blood feud.
Even if he never said like, even if he never said anything and just ignored him, like, you're going to ignore me, bitch? Fight me at dawn. Like, just go off on him. Like, there are so many different paths that could have taken, even if he had played the high road from the beginning. Or maybe, hypothetically, Fitchner's piss was acidic and it would have eventually eaten through him anyway.
I don't think so. I don't think he's got the figment in him, because I don't think the figment exists yet. What's Quicksilver doing? That's a good question, because we're getting a lot of Quicksilver in this novel too.
That's true.
It is very great that this is called the Sons of Aries, not Aries, because it is more of an introduction to Fitchner's role, but it is also an introduction to Quicksilver's involvement. So, in both ways, it's good. And
the organization itself.
Right. I don't think we hit that by the end of this necessarily.
Not at all.
But, and we'll talk about that when we get to it, but
Aries is like the last word. No, the beginning is the last word.
Yeah, right.
But
right.
Still.
Yeah, absolutely. So we move on from this basically to the duel that happens the next day in the park. We get a little interstitial scene where he comes home late to Bryn and kind of has to lie to her a little bit about like kind of the goings on, and gets a little aggressive actually, which was a little odd, I thought, character wise.
I didn't feel like he was lying. He
not lying. He was aggressive and like not telling the honest. I mean, like,
he just said
lie
that
by omission.
I don't know if you could even consider it that. Yes, I guess technically lying by omission.
It's not quite that. I'm trying to think of anything better, and I can't yet.
But he was insensitive about it. He's like, my employer is having me do these things. It's not going to get better. And then Bryn's like sitting there, laying against, like facing away from him, crying, as he's just kind of crawling into bed, saying like, "No, this is how it is now."
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So the duel, though, the depiction of the duel itself is fantastic, I think. I think that it's a great moment, like we've talked about, with how you could depict a lot of these duels in action. And you can kind of have them be like these swatting matches, and like have the knee to the chest happen, and sort of the low to the ground and then walk away. And, you know, you can depict this both graphically. I can see it, obviously, because you can see it on the fucking page. But then on top of that, you can imagine it pretty cleanly, visually.
We also, in the series, we don't get any duels that aren't within like a designated dueling location or bleeding place. This is just in a park. Like, there are people walking around behind him.
They're like, "Yep, here we are." It's like Central Park, and one guy's about to get decapitated.
Let me go get my coffee. I'm supposed to make chess over there in like 20 minutes.
One of the quotes that's added here by the audio drama I appreciated when they're going into this is so he talks about like grabbing a razor out of Quicksilver's arsenal, I believe, in the audio drama. I don't think that's talked about at all. I think it's entirely invented for the audio drama and not mentioned at all in the graphic novel. But he's like, I grabbed the oldest, most beaten down looking razor so as to like try to deceive him, Atler, inside their duel when he's arming himself. But then when he's dueling him, the reason that he says that he chose that razor is, in the words of Lornau Arcos, in a young man's game, always bet on the oldest fucker you see. And I was like, that's pretty good. It's a new Lorne quote, and I'm always a sucker for new Lorne quotes.
Does that make sense to Lorne though?
Yeah, it does. It seems Fitchnerized, which is why I'm like...
It does seem Fitchnerized. There you go.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right. That's where my brain went with it. Is it's like this is a summary quote where he's paraphrasing, you know, like
in the words of...
Yeah, right.
But I guess
fair point. Again, audio drama, like... Yeah. I feel like that's my emergency eject button on a lot of this. It's the audio drama,
but also that seems like something Fitchner would say too.
Another note from the audio drama on this section is he describes, after they're done, after he's decapitated Atler, describes the fighting style that he's using as a razor wielder as being a hint of Granite Falcon. And I was like, that's completely new. I don't know what that is. That's completely new.
Granite Falcon.
Yeah, Granite Falcon. It reminds me of what I do want more out of an expansion of the series, which is there's got to be more than 3 fucking styles of fighting. You're kidding me? Like there are all kinds of sword styles using different weapons and whatnot over the course of regular history. There's got to be here. Obviously, fucking Shadowfall uses a longer hosta and the shorter razor as well in combination. So like, there's got to be more.
Yeah, that's true.
It's what I'm wanting. It's what I want, and at the same time, I'm left wanting by you just dropping that this is Griffin, Granite, whatever the fuck it was. Falcon, Granite Falcon. I don't even Granite Falcon. There it is in the notes, but yeah, it just leaves me wanting more. Just saying that it is Granite Falcon. It's like, okay, but what's Granite Falcon? Like you didn't give me much. And then we of course get the kind of not necessarily an ultimatum, but the presentation of an option of choice from Bryn to make their family a family and not be this kind of home that's just trapped, I'm just living at home for you to like come home choice, right? And this is sort of the decision to venture out and find a carver to fix Bryn and kind of all the stuff that we know from Golden Sun.
Yeah, and this is kind of the callback to what she says earlier in that a home isn't the structure, it's what's in it or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, that's the line.
Not as eloquently said by PJ, but you get the point. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something similar to that effect.
Just as a side note, and then we'll jump right back into this. There are a number of recurring motifs that pop up, like the lamb and the scythe is a big one that's mentioned a bunch of times. There's the like outrun, like running away until you can turn around and face it, which is a big deal between, Arturius. It almost feels like there's so many different recurring themes that none of them was given enough time properly to,
Yeah.
Like too many ideas floating around and like maybe cut one of those central or give more. Of course, we go to the carver, Zorobal, which is a great name. We love Zorobal as a name. And he ends up carving together the option, gives the choice of the child. I think also another thing is I think the choice is, or the like have 2 kids joke is one that's only present in the audio drama, not in the novel. However, the choice is still presented in the graphic novel. Number of touches like that I love. I really enjoyed kind of some of those humor flourishes. I feel like they nailed more often than not, and very tense conversations. But yeah, so we're presented with this choice. They both say a boy, he'll be a gold like you. Kind of go through that motions. Did you have any thoughts on the decision to have Sepro?
So this is something we've talked about a lot in regards to packs.
Yep.
Do we now know, or at least have a better understanding of the way the carver works and the way it genetically changes them? So like, are we to assume that Pax is half-breed by name only and genetically is full gold? Because at the time, they're both gold parents, even though by birth they're not.
This sorts out none of that issue, really. Okay. And the other part of that issue is what we talked about at the very beginning of this, just for a second, is that a lot of the changes that are made are induced by drugs in colors.
Right. Yep.
In managing the population. So
if a red were to get pregnant without notifying anybody else, could they have just a normal human child outside of color?
Don't know. We never get strict examples of that. My assumption is that they're monitored, and so this is where like I would love something that would explain this, but coppers are generally like underexplained, but they're known to be the managers, right? And yellows are also underutilized in our understanding outside of war. So this is where I would believe that a copper-yellow structure would exist, where they would be monitoring. They'd notice something like that. The yellows would show up, induce whatever, and like fuck with it. And that would be like their job.
Okay.
Effectively. Like that's a system, a substructure that we don't see. That's how I imagine it would work, but we do not get that explanation.
Okay. I wasn't sure if this bled any of that information into it.
The other part of that I would say is that the Board of Quality Control would probably kill that child.
Fuck them.
Yeah, I agreed. Yes, they're bad. They are very bad. As we get into even more later.
Which Mustang was part of that shit.
She worked for them for a bit. She didn't like it, though.
She was an intern. Effectively.
Basically an intern. An unpaid intern.
I don't know about unpaid.
Well, I mean, it was definitely basically an internship. I totally agree with you. I just thought that I think that it's funny to think about, like, would she be an unpaid intern? Does that even matter? Because her dad is the governor of Mars, you know, like,
yeah.
Fuck, none of that matters. But again, weird nerd shit. Here we are. So yeah, fuck. Obviously, we have Severo. It's a great time, and we also then subsequently get the abduction. Don't we get the abduction right here too? Or do we? No, we get the current flash. So what we do is this is the each of these chapters basically ends with the prelude going back to the heist, and so this is where we see that Bryn and Severo have been abducted by Arturius. We don't understand why yet, but we know that they've been abducted. We're in the Board of Quality Control at the end of this chapter with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. We do get that. Weirdly.
Because chapter 5 has a cover that I remember, which is her sitting in a chair. So we move into, God, what do they call it when it's a taco cat?
Palindrome.
Yeah, we move into the palindrome chapter, Raw War, which is not my favorite chapter title. I'm going to be honest. I don't know why we palindromed this, guys.
I didn't even notice it.
It's so clearly delineated on the page.
There's a
line between separated and portrait.
I was looking at the pictures.
It's an intense scene.
And I wasn't looking at the chapter. I didn't even know it was called Raw War.
Oh no, that's funny. All right, yeah, this one hit me because when I was flipping through it originally, like before I had started reading it, I was like flipping just through to like look at art because I was trying to find the reverse covers on the back because I knew that there were bonus covers and I wanted to see I had started reading the first one and I wanted to see the alternate issue cover, and I hit Raw War and I was like, does that say? I can't. This is a spoiler. It's like, then when I got to it, I was like, this isn't better. Like, it didn't, context did not improve this title. But we tried. Needless to say.
We did our best.
We did our best. So we, of course, find out a lot more about what is going on between Arturius and Bryn. They have a large conversation in the room, arguing she's being interrogated by him. She's unwilling to give up Fitchner, even though he already knows the truth. He's fully aware of it. We get some very well shown scenes of like him stalking Fitchner, basically, to have like seen and heard the interactions that are going on at different points in time. So that that's how he becomes aware. He's stalking Zorobal. He interviews Zorobal, explains the Wolf Ring, basically running through the whole chapter at this point. But these are all kind of the different components that go in. And then we get the confrontation at the estate. And this is sort of the kind of Arturius, side of the plot for the chapter. We get a lot more of other plot from the heist because we really resume the heist in force in this section again. But... Mm-hmm. What'd you think of the Arturius plot and sort of the,
I think it makes sense. Just contextually, it makes sense for him to be the one to come back as the villain.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like, he was set up that way. It makes total sense. And at the same time, it was pretty satisfying to see that come
I liked it a lot.
Like that. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
God, do I want more out of him, though?
Kinda, yeah.
Like,
he's a really interesting character.
He's an interesting character that kind of falls flat just based on not being in a medium where he can really explain himself that well and be explored with that much detail.
The best explanation that we really get from him is in these last two chapters, right? This is when we really kind of understand how hurt he was by Fitchner, right? And sort of the actions that that Fitchner took of abandoning him, but also he is a total bloated asshole for not realizing how he being abandoned by Arturius was also a fucking bad thing for him. Like, he was abandoned. This never would have happened if he would have been a man and like manned up against his mom, you know?
I'd love to see that scene replayed. That scene replayed from Arturius's perspective.
Yeah. Give us that POV.
Give that POV, because intentionally Fitchner basically just writes him off halfway through, not even listening to the conversation. And is like, all right,
he also
fuck
can't
you,
hear it because
bye.
of the cars. Yeah.
But even so,
Yeah,
when he comes
just
back
hears
to
enough.
explain it,
Yeah.
he's like, I'm not even listening. I'm not even hearing what he's saying. I just know what's happening. And I'd love to see what was actually said. And
You're talking about the post conversation. I was thinking about the conversation with mom. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I'd like
he
to see that too.
summarizes. Yep. Which
But
the audio drama gives us. The audio drama gives us the mom conversation.
it does. But I don't trust the audio drama at this point. And I'd like to see like I'd
We
like to
carefully
see it
establish
from
that.
from Arturius's perspective. And like maybe he's not trying to fuck over Fitchner and like abandon him. Maybe he's trying to say like, hey, we got to play this cool a little bit. Let things die down. She's pissed. She doesn't see this like as a valid relationship between golds. We're going to prove her wrong. Here's my plan. And maybe that's what was going to happen. And Fitchner's just like, fuck you. And like walks out the door.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I would love to see kind of the full conversation, because I think the other part of that is that there is clearly brotherly love here that's been established throughout the Institute, but it also feels like there's unrequited one-sided love from how much Arturius actually cares about Fitchner. Be it, maybe overvaluing the friendship, be it any number of things, but it does feel like there is something more than platonic from Arturius's side, given how much he puts on that relationship. He values Fitchner's relationship with him so high that even he isn't willing to kill both of the people in his life. He just, like, even at the very end, we're kind of skipping ahead, and that's okay, because this all kind of these last two books really blend together as the action develops. But in the end, he's given the choice between Bryn and Severo, and Arturius didn't need to provide that fucking choice. Like, he could have just fucking killed him, but he didn't.
Also don't see Bryn die.
That scene is meant to be like her being burnt alive in
Is it?
I can't remember how it's described in Red Right. That is what it's meant to be.
I'm expecting her to come back.
Okay. Well, we know Bryn is dead.
We know she dies
in the
at some
regular
point.
series.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
I don't
fair.
think she's dead now, and I think that's going to be this is my predictions later on. But
Okay. I didn't even think to like put predictions in for the most part, but like of course we have predictions, so naturally I don't know why I had thought to skip over those.
So I'll get into it. Like, that's my primary prediction. Like, that's the only one I actually have thought out.
What do you make of the comment at the very least between like the relationship?
I don't know if I see.
Did you see any undertones? Okay.
I see it more as this is a boy who has grown up with the expectation of leading and of being powerful and being of a certain station. And it seems like Fitchner's the only one that really followed him. As far as we can tell, like he's the most prominent one, at least.
He's also the Primus of Jupiter, so like he's definitely a leader, but
he is. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. It just seemed like it seemed less friendly and more wanting to lead with the sort of feign of friendship at a certain point. Like, especially when he calls Fitchner over and is just fucked up by the time he gets there, remembers that he asked for drugs and that's about it. Doesn't remember that he invited Fitchner there, but like remembers that he wanted Fitchner to bring drugs. Like it was so not caring of him as a person and didn't feel that friendly at that point.
Yeah, okay. To extend my point just a smidge, it feels like that scene in particular makes it feel more like it was a drunk dial, like a calling like that was one of those moments when I was like, this maybe has some subtext to it, but again, I don't think it's critical. Like but
even in that
more of a
call, I guess this doesn't really back up what I was saying at all, and just kind of adds to more confusion. In that call, he says that he can't deal with these people sober, which is kind of, to me, implies that he's sober right now and doesn't want to be, but wants to get fucked up with Fitchner. And then by the time he gets there, he's fucked up and doesn't remember inviting Fitchner, but remembers asking Fitchner for drugs.
Yes. Yeah. Which definitely like muddies what you were saying a little bit, but also I feel like this is meant to be kind of a lingering question. And obviously, like, this is a late stage society. There's all kinds of gender fluidity, whatever, and sexuality fluidity that all exists and is totally acceptable. I just feel like he is also pining after Fitchner in his own way, which is also why I don't think he can ever choose to hurt Fitchner so hard.
I can see that. I didn't get that off my read, but I can absolutely see it. And I'm not trying to like disagree with you by any means. No, but I'm just trying to like explain what I was thinking throughout it.
It's also not the craziest, most solid argument in the world ever, because this is a graphic novel and we do get a lot less characterization than we normally would. However, the two out of the characters that we get, Arturius is one that we get. Arturius is one that we get a ton from. So,
it at the very least, it feels like their perception of their relationship and how that last interaction went is at odds with each other.
Oh, for sure. Great call. Yeah. They're definitely at odds.
At the very least, we know that's true, because this doesn't happen if they both understand to the same... Like, if they both have Fitchner's view of this, this confusion doesn't go forward.
No. Yeah, not at all. Totally true. Cool. All right, so that's most of Raw War. The other component here, though, is there's another like little bit that I find very interesting. There's a ton. Of course, there's the ongoing heist. There's a lot of action scenes that are fantastic. There's moments where Cyrus is breaking into things and hacking shit that's awesome. But again, it falls into that like Pierce Brown Red Rising series action where it's like, this is just really cool. And like, what else do we say outside of I really fucking liked it? Like, it was great. Any thoughts on the action?
Yeah, it was super fucking cool.
It was cool. Yeah. Like, it also added a lot of depth to some of these shots to like see these people being shot at by other people, to see like the different jump decapitations. You can imagine a lot of this stuff so clearly because of the medium. So absolute boon to the storytelling here. But on top of that, Bryn actually deceives Arturius and gets his razor for a second and has the opportunity to decapitate him, but chooses not to. I think that's massive. I think that's massive for her character and her understanding of like what she would do. I think that a lot of I can't remember if it was in the book or the audio drama again, but it was made a point of that, like, the Fitchner's thought that he saw the low colors like reacting whenever they do something against a gold or other color as like a negative thing, you know? Specifically the two reds, Doran and Rihanna. Is that what we said? Rihanna. Were reacting negatively to,
I think is what
Rihanna.
Rihanna is what we said.
Rihanna. But yeah, there's, there are components there, but Bryn's choice to not decapitate him and to instead just go.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been easier to just fucking kill him.
But it's not her bag. She's not a violent person at all.
No, and I don't know if it actually would have worked that well.
No, because truly, Arturius is also hiding all of this for Fitchner.
And Arturius he has to talk people down from, like, apprehending them later on, I feel like.
Yeah, he stops the Code Red and the Lurcher squads and everything like that at the end.
Yeah, so they would have been
home.
fucked.
Yeah.
But they're kind of fucked either way, so I don't know.
Yeah, right. Right. So we move on from there into part 6, chapter 6, unless do you have anything else in 5 that you can think of?
Nah.
It's such a great heist movie. It's fantastic. Love
It's such a great heist movie.
Heist movie comic book. So we move into chapter 6, which is Birth of a Myth, which, this is the beginning of the foundation of Aries and the Sons of Aries, as we talk with Quicksilver and whatnot. This is fantastic. But Fitchner jumping to save Severo when Bryn chooses to drop him down to her is such a fantastic moment. This is another one in the audio drama that they made very clear by using discrepancies in the audio and the sound profile of where it's coming through on your headphones to make it very clear the direction that it was coming from. Mm-hmm. I thought that a lot of that was great. Yeah, I just, both in depiction on page and screen, the song, all of it was heart-wrenching. And this is the last time that Fitchner and Bryn see each other. Potentially, yeah. I'm saying potentially for your sake, because that's
for this book, yes. I don't think we'll get into it. We'll get into the predictions later. Yeah, I felt this is part of the story that I felt like the audio drama actually did better, because it really fleshed it out and made it feel heavier. Because in the graphic novel, it's one page. This whole thing happens in one page, more or less.
Yeah, the dropping of Severo and whatnot is pretty much, it's 2 pages, 3 pages actually, because that's where like the song starts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, catch. And then Arturius notices, jumps down, and then that happens over the course of like 2 pages. So it's a section, but regardless, there's not a whole lot. Like, it's mostly art to show the action, right? To show the falling and jumping, to show the signal of like the reason that Fitchner notices because Severo dropped a toy, and like all those small little things to kind of feed into that scene.
Right. Whereas I think in the audio drama, Fitchner has to call up to her.
No, the toy still falls, but he also shouts up at her, which he also does in the graphic novel.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah, he says, "Bryn, down here," because she doesn't see him, so she doesn't know that that's an option. So he calls up either way.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, I don't blame you, because we've got not fully conflicting versions of the stories, but extra details that muddy the timeline.
It's hard to remember what comes from what, and what overlaps and what doesn't. And
it's interesting. I'm kind of glad that we chose to review it this way.
I am too,
for the sake of kind of this type of conversation is very unique.
And I intend to do it the same way next time. Would you change anything? We can get into that later too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely not change it, I don't think. But we can talk about that in a second. So the line here that we kind of talked about is, and I like the kind of moment that happens when Fitchner is holding Severo and Arturius jumps down and is there, and he's like, I gave you mercy, chops off his hand. He says, Fitchner says, "I'll kill you," in response, and then he loses his hand at the moment. I think it's a great sign of like what the razor can do, and sort of the flexibility again, like you said, like the whip, the ribbon whip that it should be. Very cool. But then he says, "And what did you do? What did you do? You spat in my eye. You chose a slave over me. And then it cuts with the image of them holding up their fists post-institute around him. And I fucking love that.
Yeah.
As a comparison of them being friends, the per aspera ad astra chant. And that friendship in less time is almost better than Cassius and Darrow's friendship. And some of that's because of the betrayal happening at different points in their lives. So, like, hard to say. But very meaningful character interaction here. And a fantastic relationship built throughout this graphic novel that I didn't expect to fully care about. And by the end, I was upset.
That over me comment gives a lot more credence to your theory.
Yes, and I forgot about it. Like over me in both contexts. Like it's over me in the friend context too, where it's like we fought together, we did all this together, we've done all this, but then on top of that, like his contemplation of like, is it because she's a lower color? Or is it because he's in love with him?
Yeah,
and I don't know. It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough for sure, but
right.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely a question there.
Yeah, there's enough to like. I don't feel like I'm reaching that far, but it's definitely not textual fully.
Right. Agreed.
But yeah, oh god, I love the way this ends, man. I love the way that this ends with basically the heist being up. We've lost Doran along the way. Does Phoenix die? Do we lose? No, we don't lose Phoenix.
No.
No. We only lose Doran to the Devourers. No one else dies.
Right.
From this group or anything like that. But yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty much the end. Did you have any other... I mean, there's like a debrief conversation that happens with Quicksilver. There's the choice, of course, between Bryn and Severo, which we talked about a little bit earlier. Anything else you want to reiterate?
Well, so this is where my prediction comes in. This is actually like the point where I'm going to be sort of extrapolating a little bit. And that's the conversation when Fitchner shows up with Rihanna and she's like, we have to go back for her. And he says she's already dead. The audio drama extrapolates that a little bit more in Fitchner's head, saying, like, rationalizing why he believes she's already dead. And I think that's a mistake because I think he doesn't know, but he does know that if they go back, they're all fucking dead. I think he believes she's still alive. And I think she is still alive. And that's going to fucking ruin the relationship between him and Rihanna. I think that is going to be the point where he fails his promise altogether in not hurting either of them. And keeping both
because
of them
Rihanna
safe.
is going to be,
Rihanna is going to find out, like, hey, she was still alive. We could have potentially saved her, and I would have done anything to try. Beyond just the betrayal of choosing Severo over her, which I think that's the right choice. Either way, no matter what, I think the rationalization of him being an innocent, I don't know, is that also strictly audio drama?
No, that's textually. Well, fuck. I think it's one of those moments where he turns down in that moment where he's asked and he looks at Severo and then makes the choice. So it's an implication because of exactly what you're saying. Like, it's an implication of his life. I just want to double check.
But either way, I don't know if Rihanna sees it that way.
Yeah.
I feel like I keep saying her name differently. I don't know if I am or not, but I feel
it's
like
fine.
I am.
We only have to do this for another episode, so it's going to be okay.
No, it's all good.
But it does not appear that narration is internal. That is from the audio drama, not from this.
I just feel like it was so not addressed that I think that's going to come into play later. This is kind of me meta scanning the dialogue, but him mentioning so explicitly that she's already dead and there being no comeback from it makes me think that that's coming into play.
Yeah, I mean, they believe so firmly that she's dead that they go back to Triton.
Yeah,
and hold a funeral.
Yeah, that's true. And if she's alive the entire time, and even if they don't see each other again, but like there's a video of her or something sent to Fitchner as a means of like taunting him, that's gonna fuck things up.
Yeah, it would be. It's going to be interesting. I have read the next one, of course, because that's kind of the concept of our podcast. But there supposedly will be a third one. That is supposedly it's a trilogy. That's supposed to be the plan. One assumes. So there are again details that are perhaps left, in the questionable zone. But methinks in comparison, methinks Bryn dead. But
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that doesn't go against your theory.
No, it doesn't.
Because, again, that doesn't ruin the prediction for what Rihanna is going to do. Rihanna is going to do. Rihanna. That's not what Rihanna's going to do.
So the other thing I'm interested in seeing is how things change between this volume and the next because of what we talked about right at the beginning.
Which is
that this was released segmented into 6 different chunks as comic books, and the next was released as a standalone single release.
Yeah, they're still treated like separate issues inside of the book, as though each chapter has its own cover, but they were released, in one solid format. Cool, man. Do you have any other thoughts that you want to talk about with this? Any other lingering components? Obviously, at the very end, he says he's Aries, and he's already tracking down potential revenge plots to go against Arturius. I mean, that's maybe what we should talk about a little bit, but
so that's something I'm really curious about. How much of a time jump there is there. Because from what we understand, not only is Quicksilver kind of involved in the inception of the Sons of Ares, it seems like, and maybe this is just from the ego of Ares, or of Quicksilver, it seems like it was kind of his idea. And that's, if this is the actual timeline, that doesn't seem to be the case. Unless there's a big chunk missing between those 2 scenes where Quicksilver's the one kind of pulling the strings. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, adopting, I would say that the thing in this that makes the least sense is adopting the name Ares almost seemingly out of context. Yeah, that's it. Really, like I don't have any further thoughts really there outside of the fact that like the mask that he wears has been Ares' mask, and he has made mention of that over time, that it's, like that was talked about over the course of the graphic novel, and is very clear looking at it that it's meant to be Ares, and so like adopting the moniker that is the mask makes sense, but doesn't have the same meaning yet.
Ares is the god of sun, but also the god of rage, isn't he?
War.
Okay.
God of war. Yeah, he is Mars and Ares.
Ares is sun too, right?
Apollo is sun.
What else was Ares then? I felt like Ares was more than just war.
No, Ares is pretty much courage and war. Apollo, though, is like sun and something else, though.
Okay.
Sun and archery. So,
yeah.
For comparison, but.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he drags out the sun. Do 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 do. Da 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 da.
I had a blast reading this, though.
I did too, man. Okay, let's go into this. I don't know why I went into that little ELO diatribe there. We'll ignore it. That's actually not ELO. It's the Beatles. Anyway, fuck me. How'd you feel about it overall? Like final thoughts?
I don't know. Overall, enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it, but I think I just want it as a novel. Like, ultimately, I feel like I would get more out of this as a novel, prequel novel, as opposed to graphic novel. It's a fun, very cool way to approach the story, and I appreciated certain aspects of seeing the razor, and I don't know, seeing how combat can play out without the flowery language. But at the same time, I feel like there's enough lacking that Pierce Brown does so well in his descriptions that I just kind of want that instead.
That's fair. I feel like my end result, and this is also based on the fact that I've already read Wrath, just keep that in mind, and I haven't listened to the Wrath audio drama, is I think I would have liked it better if I wouldn't have listened to the audio drama, to be honest, because the audio drama adds enough where it felt like I wanted the book. And I didn't necessarily want the book just reading the graphic novel in my first pass.
I could see that. I
was content with just the graphic novel. I do really like the audio drama, though, but it adds just enough that it makes me want the full narration, wants me to hear, like, to have all of this fleshed out even further, as I think it should be like a novella or a book. You know, like, that was my issue, I think, in post. I really like it, though, and I really like the audio drama. I just think that the graphic novel was spare enough that it had this good tone, it had good pace, that I ended up liking it more, I think, in the end than I liked the audio drama, but the audio drama is still a great representation and a great story. It just added good things to a point at which it also tarnished the experience that I had with the graphic novel a little bit. And that's not just to say like my one like big sticking point argument for a negative. It's more that because they were able to add so many additional paragraphs of prose and be so descriptive, I, like you, was like, why isn't this a book?
Mm-hmm.
And some of that might be our like hybrid read listen strategy that we do for the,
that's a good point.
Series.
Because let's be honest, I don't know. I feel like I've gotten into this a little bit, but the reason why I lean so heavily on the audiobooks is because I have to.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't just go at one pass for the story for our show. Like I need to experience it multiple times. And I don't have enough time to do that dedicated on its own. Like I need to be like overlapping my time somewhere. So I listen to the audiobook while I'm working or while I'm doing homework or while I'm doing other things. And I listen to it 2, 3, 4 times after reading it. Or sometimes at the same time, I'll read it and I'll listen to the audiobook, and that just drives home the information. But like, that's why I do that. And I feel like that's probably kind of a unique situation that I'm in. And I think you kind of made me realize something in that the audio drama kind of feels like an audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like I'm not that big, well-written book like most of Pierce's books are. So it just felt lacking.
Yeah. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. And again, I don't think that's even the faults of the writers or anything like that. It's a combination of expectations that we have because of the rest of the books. So
right.
On its own, this is a great production. This is it's a good production. It's a good story. But in continuation, it feels missing. It feels a little hollow.
Yeah.
But I think the graphic novel does not suffer from that same problem. It does suffer from some shorthand, but having read the 5 books as many times and have gone through it in kind of our context, I didn't feel like I was missing much outside of the one chapter that you brought up about the kids with the like early on in book 2, I think, or chapter 2. In the Institute where the 2 kids are running, and that was the most confusing scene in this entire thing to me. I was like, what the who are okay. Guyana and Artruvius. Here would be the recommendation for fans who maybe haven't listened to the audio drama. If you feel like you didn't get that much out of the graphic novel, listen to the audio drama. I read a ton of comic books. I have for a very long time. PJ's actually read a decent number of comic books compared to actual books. So I would at the very least call us both comic book literate. So like, this is something that we can both talk about in some, fashion and capacity. But if that's not your thing, the audio drama is probably great and would be the recommended way to go through this. So
I really did enjoy. I did enjoy the audio drama. It's just the side-by-side comparison of the two and reading them so closely together. It's like, what happened where? And also tying that into the fact that Pierce Brown definitely had a hand in the graphic novel, but it's kind of muddy on whether or not he did in the audio drama, and we're assuming he didn't. That's where most of our confusion is coming from. And for the most part, and for the sake of the story itself that's being told, that doesn't fucking matter at all.
Right. Yeah. Not critical, not crucial. So definitely understood.
Very
cool.
well done
else?
Audio drama. Like,
oh yeah.
Very well done.
It was incredible. That Iron Rain right in the beginning was fucking amazing. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we did enough shitting on the sort of canon aspect of the audio drama and like the differences between the two. Like, I really want to go on record and say I enjoyed the fuck out of the audio drama. Like, listening to it was very enticing.
Yeah.
I love it.
If nothing else, the combination of the two mediums also, again, reiterated what could be for a TV show and the possibility and potential for combination of sound design, visuals, that you get between these two, which was cool to think about.
That is, sorry, one more complaint for the audio drama. Sound quality was kind of shit.
Oh, mine was great.
Oh, was it?
I wonder if that was audiobook.com, maybe. Mine sounded great.
Mine
there were a couple of voices. There were a couple of voices that were that mics were not great on, and they had a little bit of reverb that I could pick up on. But that only happened a couple of times with some background actors and voices that were clearly added. And it, again, not their fault, but
mine felt like you were listening to it entirely as a phone call.
Could that be because of the speed that you listen to it at?
That could be.
I would wonder, but
that could do it. Yeah, so don't take my word for it. But I just it felt
could
very
also be the version
hissy and very weird.
Could be any number of things, but it felt well done. It's not as good as the Neil Gaiman Sandman, which is fucking incredible. I think I made mention of that in the middle of the show, but like, oh my god, Sandman, fucking wild, fucking whoa! I can't believe what they're doing over there. But they're like, that has probably 20 times the budget. Like, McAvoy is one of the leads. Patton Oswalt's in it. Like, there's so many incredible voice actors that are actual actors that are playing the parts. Fucking nutty.
That's awesome.
Anyway, neither here nor there. With that, we talked about your prediction about EO. Or not EO, excuse me, fucking Bryn. The other martyr woman.
Brio.
Oh no. But with that, next week we're going to be reading Volume 2, Wrath. So this one actually is subtitle. Comparatively, this one doesn't have one. But we'll be reading Volume 2, Wrath. Next week we'll do the same thing. We'll break down the audio drama and the graphic novel itself. We'll do it the same style. So, does that sound good?
That sounds good to me.
Cool.
Is there any format change that you'd, in retrospect, like to make? Or are you cool with the way we did it?
I'm cool with the way we did it because I think that the fun part about the way that we did this is while we had issues with the audio drama, we also were able to compare the two side by side effectively, I felt. So it made for, I think, a good listen and a good pitch as to why one might consider listening to one or the other, or might, not everyone has the money to do both. So like, pick what you will for whatever reason you will. That's part of the reason we're here. Yeah. So next week is Volume 1 of Sons of Aries, and then at the same time, Volume 2 of Sons of Aries. At the same time, MISTBORN Episode 0 is going to be coming out, and we will begin our journey into Scadrial. Episode 0 won't have any reading involved. It's just kind of some pre-predictions. It'll be quick. It's like, I think recorded it was like 40 minutes. It'll probably be 30 edited, maybe. But a quick intro.
We recorded that a while ago.
We did, and you still haven't read the first section for test material purposes.
I still haven't,
because I need to know if I can speed it up.
Episode 0.
Cool. Yeah,
right.
That's it. So again, Volume 2, and also look out for the MISTBORN episode. They should be coming out at the same time. So next Thursday, double header, double feature.
There we go.
Super cool. Way to kick off. I think this episode comes out in December, PJ. That's HowlerPod. This is that. No, the MISTBORN episodes will come out in December, though. December 2nd. And Volume 2 of Sons of Aries. Cool. So that's where we'll leave you for this week.
Andrew, Tim, our producers, are wonderful, awesome people, and they do a whole lot of work, and you should really visit what they do. They put together our show notes. Actually, we do that. Do we do that?
I put together the show notes.
Crossland does that.
I do that.
Crossland does that. But they do everything that the show notes link to, which would be the schedule, the Patreon, the previous episodes, the website, our social media stuff.
I do the social media stuff. But, I don't know. It's cool.
They make our show
you're
sound
hearing
good.
Andrew's work right now.
Andrew, without Andrew, we would sound like hot garbage. And sometimes we still do, but that's not of Andrew's fault. That's just because we are garbage human beings.
Fantastic. If you haven't already, leave us and any podcast you listen to a 5-star review. Spotify also has a new notification feature, of which is very important for referrals. It's a little bell on the episode. It provides you with a notification whenever we have a new episode that goes live. You folks know we've got one coming out to you every Thursday, at least. Maybe we might have a bonus episode in the future, that episode 0 we talked about. Maybe there'll be another one at some point down the road. You'll never know unless you click that bell. Then you'll know. You'll know when we launch new episodes outside of our normal schedule. So 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Google One, Google Play, whatever it's called now. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all.